Alrighty guys, welcome back to another one. 2 7/8 inch 10 gauge, the old standard. I've had so many people reach out over the last 2-3 months and ask me if I can do some 10 gauge 2 7/8 inch videos. And yeah, I'm glad to do that one. 10 gauge short shells is something that me and Josh actually do shoot from time to time. Whenever we get a 3.5 inch shell, as in right here, or this Fiocchi haul right here, this one was a Shadot. A little bit shorter than the Fiocchi. This is true 3.5 inch. That's 3.41, not quite 3.5. But anyway, as I was saying, whenever we get a 3.5 inch haul split on us, we trim it down to 2 7/8 inch, and I've been saving them. Here is a handful, Federals of different eras, some modern ones. Here's a modern one. This one's from the 90s. I have one, it's over there from the mid-2000s. They're all slightly different. Same internal capacity, all that good stuff, but the plastic is a little different from, decade to decade. So, we have a few saved up to film with and stuff like that. I've got a bunch actually loaded. In a future video, we'll be testing out some 10 gauge 2 7/8 inch buckshot and turkey loads. And maybe some steel shot too. Waterfowl loads. But guys, if you shoot 10 gauge, you don't always have to shoot in magnums. You can take it down to even an ounce, 7/8 ounce. The data is out there. I have some. Of course, you can load 2 7/8 inch up to 2 ounces if you want to. But, for today's purposes, we're doing a classic black powder load and a couple modern loads. We might even fold crimp one here. So to start things off, I'm using Gary Caskey's new 10 gauge adjustable wad and hull trimming kit. It comes with the shaft here. This one is set up to trim a hull to 3 inch right now. I'll explain that in just a moment. It has an X10X right here for a stabilizer, and of course the blade. This is a 10 gauge TPS wad, I believe it was. And that is to support the shaft in the upper area. That way you get a even flush cut. What's actually in the kit, aside from the shaft, is you get 2 of these screws right here. One of them is for not slitting but trimming holes. The other screw right here is for trimming wads. And this is what it looks like. It comes with, of course, instructions and extra blades. We will be using the wad trimmer too to do the modern load. You guys will see that in just a moment. But to start this off, you want to take a 3.5 inch hole. This one is a little bit ugly. It's on its 4th firing, I believe, 3rd or 4th. But guys, to be honest, I don't like these Shadot holes. They're a little bit short, and they stick in every single one of my guns. If you watch the 22 video we did, these 2 holes right here, not that one, are the 2 holes I fired in the video. They were brand new, not this one. This one was a brand new Shadot hole, and it just had a relatively mild load in it. It stuck. This one stuck also, but I'm just going to trim them down. So again, I have this one set to 3 inch or close to it, and you'll see why. It on the first cut you do with this, it doesn't get it perfectly even, but it's very, very close. All you do is stick it in there and twist it. This is roughly 3 inch right now, and as you can see, it's very, very close to flush. In fact, 99.9% of people will consider that good to go right there. But since I sometimes fold crimp these, I need it perfect. So what I do after the initial cut is I grab me a pair of needle nose pliers, and I take it down to the final trim length of 2 7/8 inches. I know what this is, has to be turned to. It's 3 turns, and that's going to get me the 2 7/8 inches. And all that's going to do is take off the excess. You can see that really thin line right there. That's what it's going to take off. And that's all that was keeping it from being perfectly flush. And as you can see, we have a final trim length of 2 7/8 inches. So that is a very cool looking hole. Looks like a 3 inch 12 gauge, but it's actually 2 7/8 inch 10 gauge. Now moving on here, you need to deprime and resize this hole. I've already done that just to save some time. Now for those of you who haven't seen my videos before, I'm using a 12 gauge lead load all press that I've converted to 10 gauge. And to do that, I've taken the shell holder plate right here and I've opened it up with a Dremel and a flat file until it fit a 10 gauge shell, just like a 12 gauge shell would. And I've also used the Dremel to open up the final crimp tube until a 10 gauge hole fits just like a 12 gauge shell normally would fit. And just while I'm at it, other modifications I've made to this press is a friend of mine, Jim, sent me a bolt-on depriming punch. I'll show you how that works while I'm, explaining all this. Just throwing a spent primer back in it. See, spent primer. This one is a Winchester 209. I used to take a hammer and a punch and set the hull on a resize ring or anything hollow and just punch it out by hand, but this thing right here has the advantage of being able to do this. Oh, had it in there sideways, but just punches it right out. No issues whatsoever. Now to resize this, you need a mech resize ring. Throw it on there, a PVC pipe, just big enough to fit over a 10 gauge hole. It's about 1.5 inches tall, and resize like normal, and then reprime and punch the ring off like normal. Anyway, enough about that. We're moving on here. The primer I'm using, since this is black powder, I'm using a Federal 209 ILM-Z. I bought these about 2 years ago. The new boxes say 209 ILM-Z on it. This just says 209. But these are black powder primers. Looks just like the 209A, but has a black, I guess you'd call it the battery cup. Looks just like that, and it has a blue instead of pink, I guess you'd call sealant in there. These are low power. They do not set off powders such as Blue Dot, Long Shot, IMR Blue, HS6, those slow burning shot show powders. It doesn't tend to work with those, but it does work with fast burning powders like Hodgdon Clays, Tightwad, Tight Group, Red Dot, Bullseye, Alliant E3, stuff like that. Extra light, it will work with those, although I do not recommend using these whatsoever with smokeless powder. But moving right along, let's get this primed. Just like that. Make sure it's flush, and it is. I'm using 125 grains of my homemade black powder. If you're using GoEx, use 100 grains here. But since this is, not corned black powder, it's just granulated, screened, I guess you'd call it. You have to use 20% more, so I'm using 120 grains, 125 here, but basically I'm filling up this Walmart powder measure with my homemade black powder. Dump that right into the hull. Make sure this is the right hull. Yep, sure is. And there we go. That fills up the case roughly 3/8 of the way full. If you guys can see it in there. The line is right here. Now on top of that, I'm using a Ballistic Products Nitro card, 70 thou. Actually, I'm going to use 2 of them. Right on top of each other. You could also use an X12X gas seal if you want to use more modern components, but this is a classic load. I'm just using nitro cards and fiber wads. We need another one of Gary's tools here. This is a wad tamper. Just going to seat those nitro cards by hand with it. Make sure they go in there straight. And they did. Now what you want to do here is add a little bit of compression. Now for this, I actually am going to use the X10X gas seal just because it works better. And this is just what I do. I like compressing my black powder, but you don't absolutely have to. I'm going to use this other press here to compress it, just like that. If you guys can see, we now have the powder down way farther than what it originally was. So you get the X10X back out, get a small screw, and again, this is just what I do. You guys do not have to do this. I just like compressing my black powder. Pull that back out. Now on top, those two nitro cards, we need a 1/2 inch fiber cushion wad. Put that right on top. Oop, that one broke in half on me, but that's okay. Seat that with your wad tamper. We now have the hull about half full, maybe a little bit less. I'm going to use one more nitro card so the pellets don't embed into the fiber cushion. If this was buckshot, I wouldn't really worry about it, but since this is birdshot, it's best to use a nitro card, at least in my opinion, over the fiber cushion. Make sure that's down all the way, and it is. So, on top of that nitro card, you can use up to 1 5/8 ounces of lead shot here and still get a good, nice roll crimp on it. But I'm using 1.5 ounces. You could load it down to 1.25 ounces if you wanted to. Just use more fiber cushion wad or more nitro cards. Again, I'm using 1.5 ounces here. It comes up to right here inside the hull. That's plenty of room left for a good roll crimp. Again, you can use up to 1 5/8 if you want to. Now, for an overshot card, before we roll this, you can use another nitro card or a bingo chip, which is what I'm going to use just for demonstration purposes. The red bingo chip looks really cool with this red hull, and it's see-through. You can see the pellets. Here's the red bingo chip. It goes right on top. See it in there? We're going to give this a roll crimp, and then I'll show you guys what it looks like. And here's what it looks like once we're done. We have a fairly decent roll on it. Again, you can see through it. I'll turn the camera around so you guys can get a better look at this. You gotta love that red transparent bingo chip. Pretty good looking shell. Alright, so for the next load, this one's more modern. We're still roll crimping this one. Using a Federal hull here, cut to 2 7/8 inches. Already de-primed and resized. I'm going back with a Shadot 209 primer. Looks just like that. We're using a BPD 10 wad here from Ballistic Products. You could also use the TPS. We're trimming this with a Gary Caskey's wad trimmer. I will tell you the overall length of it after I trim it, because, to be honest, I done forgot. It's trimmed to length now. The overall length of it after trimming is 1 7/8 inches. Powder charge we're using is 31 grains of long shot. There's our 31 grains. As always, double check it. We got it. Now we need to actually slit the wad because the BPD 10s, the ones I have, are unslit. So, another one of Gary's tools here. Adjustable wad slitter for, this one's for 12 and 16 gauge. But I'm just going to use it for the 10 gauge holes. It doesn't always slit them perfectly even, but it does good enough. You'll see. And how that works, I meant to do that on camera. Here, I have another one sitting here. But how it works is you just, the brass part, you turn it, and that controls the depth of the slit. I'll show you here. The more I turn it, you can watch it slowly go down. Or if you want to full cut your wad all the way down to the bottom of it, you can take it all the way out to full cut your wad. But what I like is a 3/4 cut, 75% slit, and 4 petals, which is about right here. I'll get this one here on camera. You just set it in the center of it the best you can, and you push down. On 12 and 16 gauge wads, it lines itself up, but these 10 gauge ones are quite a bit bigger, so you don't always end up with perfectly, uniform petals. I believe Gary does make a 10 gauge wad slitter though. Once you got your wad trimmed and slit, go ahead and throw that right into your hull. Going to use a wad tamper to make sure it's down the powder good. And you could roll or fold crimp this. For filler, I'm just using about an 1/8 inch fiber cushion wad. That one was for 10 gauge. You need the 20 gauge ones, but like I always say when I'm doing stuff with fiber cushion wads, I only buy the 10 gauge ones and I trim them or tear them to size. And I always buy them in the 1/2 inch length because more for less money. More product, less money. But we have that in place now. We need 2 ounces of lead shot. Mine is 7.5. Size does not matter. It's all about the payload weight. Again, that's 2 ounces of lead shot. Comes up right there. I know it's hard to see because this is a brown hull, but room left for the roll. I'm going to use another bingo chip here. We're going with the green one this time. Just place it right on top, and those are 3/4 inch bingo chips. And here's what it looks like after giving it a roll. I'm using the Ballistic Products roll crimp tool. It does pretty good with 10 gauge. The green and brown looks pretty good together. Yep, that is a 2 ounce load in a 2 7/8 inch shell. If you want any of Gary's tools, he's on Facebook, gary.d.caskey. You'll find him. He has lots of stuff. I'm sure he will help you guys out with whatever you need. 2 ounces is fairly light for a 10 gauge, especially in 3.5 inch length. We're getting 2 1/4 ounces in 12 gauge, 3.5 inch, and 10 gauge is bigger by 46 thousandths. Guys, there is tons of room in a 10 gauge hull. I'm loading the 3.5 inch 10 gauge all the way up to 3 ounces with lead shot at 1175 FPS, making it the true monster it really is. And of course, you don't have to use lead shot for that load right there. You can always use buckshot if you want to. 2 ounces, but I recommend staying a little bit below 2 ounces and using buffer to bring it up to the 2 ounces, like maybe stick around 1.95. So that would be 16 pellets of double-aught buck, 18 pellets of single-aught buck, 20 pellets of 29 caliber number 1 buck, or 30 cal number 1. Just anything like that. You could also use buffer in the lead shot load that you see me put together. Load 1.95 ounces and bring it up to 2 with buffer. And this isn't necessary, but always be sure to polish your brass on your once fired hulls, especially if they start getting, a little bit tarnished. You can really make them look like a dream. Shiny again. That was quad-aught steel wool. Okay, so for the modern load, we're going to do a 1.5 ounce load with buckshot. We're using double-aught buck, 12 pellets of it. We need the Federal hull. You could use any hull you want, really, but I'm using the Federal. We need another Shadot primer. Get that in the hull. Just like that. We are fold crimping this one. This is an 1.5 ounce load. I'm using 34 grains of long shot. Should get us some respectable velocity too. Alright, there's our 34 grains. As always, double check it. Sure is. We're using the other BPD-10 wad that we slid a minute ago. Make sure that's done on powder good. One thing you can always do to make sure of that is to rattle it. Hear nothing? It's on the powder good. Now we need another 1/8 inch of this fiber cushion wad. Something about like that. Stuff it down in there. Wad tamper. Make it flat. Looks just like this. 12 pellets of 33 caliber double-aught buckshot. Got mine right here. It is powder coated pink. The reason I powder coat them is because I never know if I'm going to load the buckshot conventionally, which means no shot cup. In that case, the lead shot comes in contact with the barrels, and I have had several barrels become leaded up with, lead shot. And not really a fan of that, so I've been powder coating my pellets. There's 6, 8, 10, and 12. 12 pellets comes up right to the top of the wad. right where it needs to be. Now we need some buffer. The buffer I'm using in this load is the Ballistic Products mix number 47. I also use the original buffer and the ITX buffer all the same. Here's 1 scoop. I'm going to say this needs about 2 scoops of the Lee 2.2 cc dipper. There's 1, 2. I think that's all this load needed. It's been a minute since I've put one together. Alright, it looks like 2 did the trick. We can see the top row of pellets just barely peeking through. Now on top of that, we need a 10 gauge nitro card. Just get one of these, and this is the 70 thou. Tear it in half. That's going to do 2 things. It's going to keep the buffer from leaking out, and it's also going to get you a little bit better crimp. The pre-crimp station of the Lee Loadoll here is completely unmodified from the 12 gauge. Might have to step to the other side to do this, but it fits in there like it's made for it. Bring it down. Oops. There we go. Here's the pre-crimp. Looks awesome. Alright, let's go ahead and finish that off. I'm pulling down, turning the hull, pulling down again, turning the hull, down again, turn the hull. And this gets you a more uniform crimp overall. You guys have seen me do this a million times if you watch my channel regularly. One more ought to get it. One more for good measure. And we end up with this right here. Nice and deep set crimp. Looks like factory 12 gauge crimps. We got no bulging of the hull. Just a very nice looking load overall. We ended up with a very, very small pinhole right in the center, but that's okay. That's what that nitro card in there is for. But we have no bulging of the hull. Very nice even crimp on top. Pretty deep set, will not pop back open. And it's all uniform, very, very nice looking shell. Again, 2 7/8 inch. You normally don't see these ever fold crimped. Here's what that shell we just loaded looks like compared to a 2 3/4 inch 12 gauge. That's a Lyman 525 slug that my friend Zach loaded on his mech press. Right in between 3 inch and 2 3/4 inch. Well guys, that's about all I got for you today. Just wanted to fulfill a long time request for 2 7/8 inch 10 gauge. Happy to do it. There you go guys, all you 10 gauge fans out there, have at it. But we want to thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe. We greatly appreciate that. If you got any questions or comments, leave it in the comment section down below. We will get back to you. If you want to, go check out our Patreon. I'll leave a link to it in the description. It's as low as $1 a month, and you get early access to videos. But other than that, you guys take it easy. We'll see you in the next one.